Imagine standing on a beach and seeing the horizon completely disappear. Not behind fog, but behind wood and sail. In the late 1200s, the Japanese samurai looked out at the ocean and saw the largest naval invasion fleet the world had ever known. They were facing an empire that had crushed China, Russia, and the Middle East. The odds were impossible. The enemy was undefeated, and the samurai had to make a choice: submit to the superpower or gamble everything on a fight they probably couldn't win. You're watching Be Explained, and this is the samurai's greatest gamble. The year is 1268. The Mongol Empire is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Led by Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis, they control a massive chunk of the Eurasian landmass. Japan, by comparison, is a chaotic collection of islands, ruled by a military government called the Kamakura Shogunate. The emperor is a figurehead. The real power lies with the samurai clans. But to Kublai Khan, Japan is just a nuisance, a tiny rock that hasn't paid its respect. He sends a letter. It's polite, but the subtext is clear. Join my family of nations, or I send the army. The Japanese government ignores him. They ignore the next letter too. For the Mongols, this is an insult. For the samurai, it's a declaration of war. But they have no idea what is coming for them. In 1274, the first wave hits. 900 ships land at Hakata Bay. When the samurai ride out to meet them, they get a nasty shock. Warfare in Japan was ritualistic. A samurai would ride out, announce his name and lineage, and find a worthy opponent to duel. It was personal. The Mongols didn't care about lineage. They fought in tight formations, moving like a single machine to the sound of drums and gongs. They used poisoned arrows, and they brought something the Japanese had never seen before: gunpowder bombs. Explosions ripped through the samurai lines. Their horses panicked. The Japanese were pushed back, inland, away from the beach. It looked like the end. But the next morning, the bay was empty. A severe storm had blown in overnight. The Mongol pilots, afraid of getting smashed against the rocks, took the fleet back out to sea, where many ships sank. The survivors retreated to Korea. Japan had survived by sheer luck. But here's the catch. Kublai Khan doesn't quit. Everyone knew he would be back, and next time he wouldn't bring a raiding party. He would bring an armada. This is where the real gamble begins. The shogunate knows they can't stop the Mongol war machine in a fair fight. So they decide to change the terrain. For 7 years, they mobilized the country. They draft labourers and samurai alike to build a massive stone wall along the coast of Hakata Bay. It's over 20 kilometres long and roughly 2 metres high. This was a desperate move. It cost a fortune. It pulled men away from their farms, and if the Mongols decided to land literally anywhere else, the wall would be a useless pile of rocks. But the samurai bet that the Mongols, creatures of habit, would return to the same convenient port. In 1281, the Khan returns. This time the numbers are staggering. 2 fleets, over 4,000 ships, an estimated 140,000 men. It was the largest amphibious assault in history until D-Day in 1944. They headed straight for Hakata Bay. The gamble paid off. When the Mongol landing craft hit the beach, they hit the wall. They couldn't form their deadly phalanxes. They couldn't deploy their cavalry. The samurai, fighting from the top of the fortifications, held the line. For weeks it was a brutal stalemate. The samurai even took the offensive, using small, agile boats to board the massive Mongol ships at night, setting fires and cutting throats in close quarters. The Mongols were stuck on their ships, cramping up, running low on supplies and getting sick. Then the sky turned black. A massive typhoon slammed into the fleet. This wasn't just a storm, it was a catastrophic weather event. The divine wind, or kamikaze. The Mongol ships, chained together for stability, were smashed into kindling. Tens of thousands drowned. The invasion was over. Japan had won. But the story doesn't have a happy ending for the victors. Here is the dark reality of that victory. Feudalism runs on a simple transaction. You fight for me, and if we win, I give you the land we conquered. The samurai had fought harder than ever before. They had spent their own money on armour, weapons, and provisions. They expected a payout. But there was no land to give. They hadn't conquered a new country. They had just defended their own. The invaders didn't leave behind treasure, only shipwrecks and corpses. The shogunate couldn't pay its debts. This caused a massive social breakdown. The warrior class, now broke and angry, turned against the government they had just saved. The prestige of the Kamakura shogunate collapsed. The defense of Japan was a military miracle, but it was an economic death sentence. So, what is the legacy of this impossible defense? The wall saved them. Without that massive stone barrier holding the Mongols at sea, the typhoon would have arrived too late. The cost of war. Winning the battle actually destroyed the government, proving that even a victory can bankrupt an empire. The legend. This moment convinced Japan that they were protected by the gods, a belief that would fuel their military for the next 600 years. The Kamakura government fell, eaten alive by its own unpaid army. But think about the alternative. Every other nation in the Mongols' path was erased or enslaved. Japan stood alone at the edge of the world, faced the apocalypse, and didn't blink. They built a wall against the ocean. They fought an empire to a standstill, and when they needed a miracle, the sky actually answered. The samurai bet their lives, their fortunes, and their sanity on a single strip of coastline. They stood on that wall, watched the world's mightiest fleet turn into driftwood, and realized they had done the impossible.
This is Be Explained. If you want history without myths or noise, subscribe, because the past still shapes the present, and here it is explained.